Our top story tonight, tens of thousands took to the streets across the country today for the No Kings protest. We'll take you to Chicago, where NTD's Chris Bobb was on the ground with demonstrators. An expert discusses the funders behind the No Kings movement. Who are they and why are they against President Trump? President Trump confirms that 2 narco-terrorists who survived a U.S. strike on their submarine will be returned to their countries. Celebrating 250 years of the U.S. Marine Corps, the military is showcasing its firepower at Camp Pendleton, just north of San Diego. Vice President J.D. Vance addresses a crowd of 15,000. Jack Bradley is on the scene with details. And in baseball, Shohei Ohtani's jaw-dropping performance puts the Dodgers back in the World Series. NTD's Dave Martin joins us to discuss.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Arlene Richards. From a historic Gaza peace deal to major White House announcements on foreign policy and family care, it's been a significant week for President Trump. NTD's Daniel Monahan has your White House week in review.
President Trump brokered a historic Gaza ceasefire and the release of all living Israeli hostages still held in Gaza. Speaking to the Knesset, Trump shared an optimistic vision of the region, calling it the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
This is not only the end of a war, this is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God.
From Israel, Trump traveled to the Gaza Peace Summit in Egypt, signing the ceasefire agreement alongside Middle East leaders.
We don't want to fund anything having to do with bloodshed, hatred, or terror. We're also agreed that Gaza's reconstruction requires that it be demilitarized.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu nominated Trump to be the first non-Israeli recipient of Israel's highest honor.
As to that other prize, just a question of time, you'll get it. But I want you to get the Israel Prize, our highest award, to our greatest friend.
The Egyptian president also awarded President Trump the country's highest honor, and the Pakistani prime minister renominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. responded to Trump saying he didn't think his peace deal in the Middle East would be enough to get him into heaven.
You're doing God's work here. You've made peace in the Middle East, which is beyond anybody's imagination. This administration has not stopped working for the American people.
President Trump rushed back to America to award the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Charlie Kirk on what would have been his 32nd birthday.
I would not have missed this moment for anything in the world.
Now I can say with confidence, Mr. President, that you have given him the best birthday gift he could ever have.
President Trump this week also signed a proclamation declaring October 14th as the National Day of Remembrance for Charlie Kirk.
Remember Charlie down on the patio? He could sit there all night long listening to this.
President Trump said on Thursday that costs of in vitro fertilization medications and treatment will be slashed.
EMD Serrano, the largest fertility drug manufacturer in the world, has agreed to provide massive discounts to all fertility drugs.
Trump also said the administration would expand access to insurance coverage for fertility care, allowing employers to offer a standalone fertility benefit.
Thank you for all you do to support families in this country.
Following a 2-hour call, President Trump said he and Russia's Vladimir Putin will meet in Hungary in the coming weeks to discuss ending the war in Ukraine.
I thought it was a very good phone call. I thought very productive.
The call came just a day before Trump hosted Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House to talk about possible U.S. missile support.
This is a terrible relationship the two of them have, and it's one of those things.
Trump said he's approved covert CIA actions inside Venezuela against what he calls a narco state run by President Nicolas Maduro.
We have a lot of drugs coming in from Venezuela, and a lot of the Venezuelan drugs come in through the sea.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen accused the administration of sliding the U.S. closer to outright conflict with no transparency or oversight. And for the 10th time, the Senate rejected a House-approved stopgap spending bill as the government shutdown drags on with no resolution in sight. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
President Trump has confirmed that the U.S. destroyed a drug-carrying submarine headed towards the United States and navigated by narco-terrorists, 2 of whom survived and will be sent back to their countries of origin. Along with a video of what appears to be a strike on the submarine, the president posted the announcement on Truth Social. He said the submarine was mostly loaded up with fentanyl and other illegal drugs, adding, quote, "At least 25,000 Americans would die if I allowed this submarine to come ashore." Trump said that 4 known terrorists were on board and that the 2 who survived are being returned to Ecuador and Colombia for detention and prosecution. Lawmakers left Washington after a short week and a 10th failed vote to reopen the government. Republican leadership offered Democrats a vote on their health care demands, but said that Democrats rejected their offer. Here's NTD's Melina Weisskopf with a weekly recap from Capitol Hill.
Republicans say their latest attempt to move the needle on ending the government shutdown was shot down by Senate Democrats this week. Senate Majority Leader John Thune said he offered Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer a vote on Obamacare subsidies. Remember, that is one of the main issues that Democrats want addressed in this shutdown showdown. The Republicans say Democrats rejected it, instead insisting a guaranteed outcome.
I said none of us can guarantee an outcome on that. I have said consistently all along, this is part of the deliberative process. We're going to debate and discuss that. It's a very complicated, complex matter. There are no income caps on that. By the way, did you know if you're a hardworking taxpayer, middle-class earner, and your family's struggling to put food on the table, did you know that you are subsidizing wealthy people's health care with that subsidy? You probably didn't.
Schumer, though, outright denied the existence of any such offer.
We're not negotiating in public, plain and simple. And Leader Thune has not come to me with any proposal at this point.
The back and forth comes as the government shutdown drags on for 3 weeks. Both sides still locked in to their positions.
These threats to try to back us off our position, it's not working and it's not going to happen, because there is a Republican health care crisis that is devastating the American people, and we're going to continue to stand up for everyday Americans.
Are holding the American people hostage, using you as leverage to demand more wasteful spending. That's what they want, to the tune of $1.5 trillion of that.
Senators left town on Thursday after the 10th failed vote to fund the government. Republicans attempted a new strategy to carry on with the regular funding process during the shutdown. They put forth a full-year Pentagon funding bill. Senate Democrats tanked it, too.
President, Democrats like to position themselves as the party of the little guy and the defender of hardworking Americans. But as this vote makes clear, who do Democrats really care about? Democrats.
Senate Leader John Thune reportedly plans to force Democrats to vote next week on legislation to pay military service members during the shutdown. Meanwhile, Senate Democrats this week aim to stop the Trump administration's strikes on foreign terrorist organizations that are trafficking drugs in the South Caribbean Sea.
Congress should demand to know what the evidence is that these boats are part of a cartel, some invading or hostile foreign adversary that would justify using the rules of law and war against these kinds of boats.
The U.S. has conducted a total of 6 strikes so far, stopping approximately 100,000 lethal doses of drugs from being smuggled into the U.S.
The drug epidemic in this country has not gotten any better. The cartels have only gotten more powerful. So the president is taking these unprecedented steps, and it's making a real impact. We are seeing less boats with lots of drugs coming into the shores of the United States of America as a result of these successful strikes, and I think the American people can expect them to continue.
The Senate will soon vote on a Democrat resolution to stop the administration from continuing the strikes against foreign terrorist organizations. In the past month, similar attempts have failed both in the House and in the Senate. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Now to Chicago, where demonstrations are still underway as part of the nationwide No Kings protest. Thousands gathered across the country today. Bob was on the ground outside the rally site in Chicago's Grant Park earlier today. Chris, what was the turnout like there, and what did you see and experience?
Massive turnout back at Grant Park and down the streets. What I'm seeing right now, I'm changing locations here. I'm outside the Broadview ICE Detention Center. To my right, you have a number of officers arresting someone dressed in black bloc, which is a full black uniform, black bicycle helmet. A lot of the protesters who were initially in the designated protest zone have moved over and are currently speaking to the officers who are executing the arrest. All of the attendees here that I've spoken to have come from the larger No Kings protest, which is still going on in downtown Chicago. It began at noon in Grant Park. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, along with other speakers, addressed a crowd that surpassed the 15,000 people who turned out for the first No Kings protest back on June 14th. After the speeches, the march stretched roughly 2 miles up Michigan Avenue to Wacker Drive with a steady stream of people chanting and holding signs. I caught up with the protest at Wacker Drive. Here's what those who attended said about why they're marching. So you can see we have some footage of the attendees who were marching down Wacker Drive, and you can listen to what they had to say about why they attended.
Really spurred by the fact that we need humanity in this world, and what's happening is not okay in our country, and we got to fight back and stand up.
I don't want abortion to be banned. I want people to be able to make their own decisions for themselves and for democracy to be real in a democratic country.
Literally right outside of my house, we had a tear gas attack, and it's about being in that moment, putting yourself out there and being there.
By the people, for the people. Power, and no one is above the law, and it just seems like so much hate is just focused on the wrong people. They're just being used, and we're divided. People are protesting peacefully, and that's a beginning.
Do you expect it to remain peaceful?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
And what do you think happens after today?
Not much, really.
On that note of peace, we learned earlier from the NYPD, back where you are in headquarters, that there were 100,000 protesters who turned out for No Kings, and in all 5 boroughs. But the NYPD didn't exercise any protest-related arrests, rather. The same could not be said over here outside the Broadview ICE Center. Back to you.
All right. Thanks, Chris, for that update. Now, the U.S. Marine Corps is showcasing its military might with flyovers, carriers, and equipment displays in California. Vice President J.D. Vance is set to address the crowd. We go now to NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley, live at Camp Pendleton in Southern California. Jack, how is the Marine Corps marking this landmark anniversary?
May God bless the United States of America. Thank you. Hope you have a great day.
We're hearing a message of courage and honor here, and one of excitement. A lot of people fired up here to feel that excitement. Now, we're over 15,000 Navy sailors, as well as Marines, veterans, and their family members, all here to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Marine Corps here at Camp Pendleton, which is just north of San Diego. At Camp Pendleton, we saw military jet flyovers, people jumping out of those jets, Marines, and landing safely onto the base of the sand right behind the stage here behind me. Many speakers speaking about the values it takes to become a Marine, looking after those next to you and serving your country. Even Jocko Willink, a former Navy SEAL, famed one at that, spoke about his time serving here. Let's take a look at that.
Despite all the people that fear the rise of evil in the world, despite all the people that are concerned about the future of freedom, I can tell you this: I am not concerned at all. Because I know that no matter what happens, there are some men. There are a few good men and women called Marines. And I know that you will never back down. I know that you will never surrender. I know that you will uphold the ideals of this blessed country.
And now the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, has just begun speaking. We're going to go to that right now. Let's take a look.
And the Navy SEALs I had a chance to do PT with this morning. You know, I do PT all around the country now with the troops, and it's turned into smoke the secretary. It's clear to me why President Trump says all the time we're the strongest, most powerful, most lethal, and most prepared military on the planet. Because you are that strength. You are that power. You are that lethality. And you are prepared. And President Trump's going to make sure it stays that way. Being here with you is the perfect way to mark 250 years of the beautiful and beloved United States Marine Corps. President Trump has made our mission clear. We needed clarity, and he provided it. America first, peace through strength, and common sense at every turn. We are the War Department, and you are warriors. The Marine Corps embodies the warrior ethos. You see, when other parts of the department wavered in years past, not anymore, in years past, the Marine Corps stood strong. When other parts of the department wanted to go woke, the Marine Corps stood strong. When other parts of the department wanted to lower standards, the Marine Corps stood strong. You, ladies and gentlemen, are the backbone of the United States military. You always have been, and that's why we're proud to honor you today. 250 years ago, Major Samuel Nichols formed the Continental Marines. The next year, the Marines won the Battle of Nassau, capturing 2 forts from the Brits. Since that day, the very mention of the Marine Corps stirred panic in the hearts of our enemies. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, Marines have been the tip of the spear of our armed forces and the vanguard of the fight for freedom, just as they are right now in the Caribbean. Let's hope the wrong people don't FAFO around there. In the most critical battles our nation has ever faced, it is often Marines, forged by unique traditions and tough-as-nails training, who land first. And they volunteer to put themselves in harm's way. Thanks to the blood and sweat of men who came before you, every American knows the truth of the phrase. It's not just a phrase, it's a way of life for all of you. Semper Fidelis, always faithful. You see, because I look out at this crowd, I see a lot of different types of faces. The truth is, your diversity is not your strength. It never has been. Your strength is in your unity of purpose. It's in your shared mission. It's in your oath to the Constitution. It's the bond that turns individuals into single-minded fighting units. You see, you are set apart. You're not civilians. You're devil dogs, leathernecks, United States Marines. Hoorah! You are set apart for a distinct purpose. You kill bad guys and break things for a living. You close with and destroy the enemy for a living. And as we mark the 250th birthday of the Marine Corps, take a moment and remember where you are in the great American story. Everybody likes to talk about 1776, and that was a pretty important date, but we're not here without 1775. When Americans were willing to stand up and pick up a rifle and say, "We will live free." That spirit lives in all of you. That story includes heroes like Chesty Puller, Daniel Daly, and our own great Vice President and Marine J.D. Vance.
All right, Jack, we know that Vice President J.D. Vance is also scheduled to speak a little later. What are you expecting him to talk about?
Discipline, accountability, warfighting, lethality, they live.
Well, Vance is the first vice president who was a U.S. Marine, and so he may be speaking about his time in Operation Iraqi Freedom when he was deployed to Iraq. We also discussed about Semper Fi, which means always faithful, and also the new investments that the Trump administration is making in the U.S. military to maintain its status as the dominant military superpower in the world. Back to you.
All right, Jack, thanks so much for that report. Coming up, a discussion on the anti-Trump movement that's hitting cities and towns nationwide today. And in baseball, Shohei Ohtani's jaw-dropping performance puts the Dodgers back in the World Series. NTD's Dave Martin joins us to discuss when we come back. Today, the second wave of No Kings protests is taking place as more than 2,500 events were planned across all 50 states. Organizers of the widespread movement express a growing frustration with the government shutdown and Trump administration policies. Who are the organizers behind the demonstrations? Joining me now to address this and more is Trevor Loudon, an author, filmmaker, and public speaker. For more than 30 years, he has researched Marxist and terrorist movements, as well as the influence of the Chinese Communist Party. Trevor, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Now, looking at the partners of this event, I looked at it earlier, and the list is quite extensive. Now, you've got many left-wing groups involved in this. Have you seen anything like this before?
Yeah, this is just a rehash of Black Lives Matter, of Indivisible, of the protests that happened after Trump was first inaugurated, of the Women's March. This is the same communists, the same union leaders, and the same radical leftists who come out for everything. They drag their cousins, they drag their kids, they try and make a big show. You know, but it's not a big show. You know, they got 100,000 in New York. That's 1% of the population. That's the headquarters of the Communist Party. That's the headquarters of Democratic Socialists of America, which has 11,000 members in the city. So really, I'd be quite disappointed if I were the organizers of this event.
Now, looking at their website, the organizers say their goal is to ensure the country belongs to the people. And now, obviously, Trump was elected by the people. So this seems to be more of an anti-Trump movement, as you've kind of alluded to there. So why are these organizers so opposed to him?
Well, because they are communists. They are Marxists. And they see their revolution slipping away. As Trump is defunding the deep state, as Trump is laying off government workers, as Trump is appealing to minority voters, which has always been a big target of the radical left. And he is most importantly sealing the borders and deporting illegal immigrants. Their means of revolution is slowly slipping away. They were planning on a communist revolution in America by using minorities, using illegal immigrants to swamp the voting base, to elect a permanent government in this country, basically a permanent left-wing government in this country run by Marxists. So they hate Trump because whether he understands it or not, he's setting them back decades, setting them back years. And so they are going to rally every little bit of support they can. This is what they did during the Vietnam War. You know, they rallied every young hippie, every communist, every radical unionist, every progressive churchman to come out and march on the streets. And the American media played this up as though it was some big spontaneous movement, and that sort of eroded support for the war. Well, this is designed to erode support for President Trump. The left-wing media will play up the numbers, and this is a big groundswell. No, these are foreign-backed communists from the Communist Party USA and Democratic Socialists of America who are allied to China and Cuba and Venezuela and Iran, doing their best to turn public support against Trump. That is all this is. This is not anything more than communist agitation.
Now, as you've been saying, these protests today are part of this wider movement, and there are other organizations that have done this previously. And we've also seen since at least March, the Tesla takedown, hands off, and May Day. Senator Ted Cruz spoke recently about one person who's funding some of these movements. So let's watch this.
You look at this No Kings rally, and there's considerable evidence that George Soros and his network is behind funding these rallies, which may well be riots all across the country, and Soros is writing the check.
So we reached out to George Soros's Open Society Foundation, and they said the grants they'd given to Indivisible, which is a lead organizer of the protests, weren't specifically for No Kings. An Open Society Foundation spokesperson also said, quote, "We support a wide range of independent organizations that work to deepen civic engagement through peaceful democratic participation." So Trevor, the question for you is, what more can you tell us about this funding for these large-scale protests, and who are the big players here?
Yeah, look, I think it's a mistake to blame everything on George Soros. George Soros is part of the Democracy Alliance, which is about 200 left-wing billionaires and major labor unions who organize, who spend billions of dollars supporting the radical left in this country. Yes, Soros is part of this, but this is also Steve Phillips. Tom Steyer is part of the Democracy Alliance. Several big names that we know, and many major labor unions. So together, to belong to the Democracy Alliance, you have to donate $200,000 a year just to belong to it. And so many of these people are donating hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's well beyond George Soros. It is a mistake to pin it all on Soros. The movement is way broader and wider, and many of these billionaires have deep connections to China or other foreign entities. So ultimately, the impetus for this movement comes from China and other enemies of America. Just like Black Lives Matter was a Chinese operation, to a large degree, this is also a Chinese operation and a Venezuelan operation. But I'm sure most of the marchers have no idea of this, just as most of the people who supported Black Lives Matter had very little idea that the leaders of it were working with the Chinese consulate in San Francisco.
Now, I want to switch gears a little bit here. It might be related. We're seeing a growing number of these anti-ICE protests in the cities where the president has deployed the National Guard. So the No Kings organizers have said on their website that the administration is targeting immigrant families. So is there any indication that the organizers and funders are also behind the anti-ICE protests, which have gotten violent in some places?
Well, the anti-ICE protests are organized primarily by the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, which is an openly pro-China organization, which put on their website today, "Our job is to bring down President Trump by making the country ungovernable." These are exactly the same people who started the George Floyd riots and set riots going in about 30 cities across America. They were behind the recent Los Angeles riot, which was sparked when they were basically following and abusing and chasing ICE activists. This is all Freedom Road Socialist Organization with some help from DSA, help from Communist Party USA, and some help from the Party for Socialism Liberation. But this is absolutely the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. I'll say that repeatedly. The same people who were the primary organizers behind the George Floyd riots and also tried to get UPS out on strike a couple of years ago. Very, very, very violent pro-Chinese communist organization.
Now, another organization or group that we've been hearing about so much recently is Antifa. So when it comes to the anti-ICE demonstrations, how involved has Antifa been and what do they want?
Well, Antifa is sort of another set again. And I saw a recent article about a Chinese businessman in Los Angeles who was supplying Antifa with gear, protective gear and this kind of thing from a warehouse. So Antifa is the military wing of the Democratic Party and the American left. And Antifa is a bit amorphous. Like in some areas, it's primarily made up of Democratic Socialists of America people. Some areas there might be some Maoists involved or some anarchists, pro-Venezuelan people. It sort of varies according to which part of the country you're in. But the Antifa network is named after the first Antifa, which was the military wing of the German Communist Party before World War II. That became the Black Bloc, which was big in the late 90s in America and Eastern Europe, and former communist Eastern Europe. And now it's called Antifa America. But it's got branches all over the world. But it's basically it's primarily anarcho-communists, many of whom have links to Venezuela or Middle Eastern radical groups around Iraq, Kurdish groups, etc. So they're also foreign connected, but they serve. That's why they're only really strong in Democrat-controlled cities, because they do the dirty work of the Democrats to shut down conservatives, beat people up, and then, of course, the Democrat-controlled police don't arrest them, or if they do arrest them, the Democrat-controlled left-wing DAs let them out the next day. So that the military wing of the Democratic Party and the militant left in this country.
Well, with so many organizations and individuals involved in this, it's going to be interesting to see, how this all plays out and how high or how big it escalates in the future. Trevor Loudon, author, speaker, and filmmaker, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. A pleasure.
Coming up in baseball, Shohei Ohtani's jaw-dropping performance puts the Dodgers back in the World Series. NTD's Dave Martin joins us to discuss. For your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, good to see you as always.
Yeah, good to see you, Arlene.
Yeah, and a big night last night. Let's kick it right off with baseball. Shohei Ohtani, 3 home runs and a 6 innings of shutout, right? Shutout, 6 innings.
6 shutout. Yeah, you got it. 6 shutout innings.
Okay, so where does that put him in the rankings?
I mean, as far as individual performances in baseball history, I mean, that is way up there. I mean, before yesterday, think about this. Before yesterday, only 12 players in the history of baseball's playoffs, which is over 100 years, had 12 players hit 3 home runs in 1 game. And also, only 26 pitchers had thrown 6 shutout innings, allowing 2 hits or less while getting at least 10 strikeouts in a playoff game. Ohtani did both of those in the same game. And by the way, the second of those 3 home runs was the longest at Dodger Stadium this season, 469 feet. It one bounced the roof beyond center field. I mean, this was a jaw-dropping performance for him last night. In any case, Dodgers won 5-1 to clinch the NLCS over the Brewers. They completed their sweep of Milwaukee. They are now headed to the World Series. Let's listen to what Shohei Ohtani said afterwards.
そうです。今日この試合以外はやっぱり僕も苦戦してましたし。
As I stated before, there were at times during the postseason where Teo and Mookie, picked me up, and this time around it was my turn to be able to perform. And I think just looking back over the course of the entire postseason, I haven't performed to the expectation, but I think today we saw what the left-handed hitters could do.
今日の試合はそれがよく僕の役割の中で発揮されてたのかなと思ってます。
Yeah, that was probably the greatest postseason performance of all time. And there's been a lot of postseason games, and there's a reason why he's the greatest player on the planet. You know, what he did on the mound, what he did at the bat, he created a lot of memories for a lot of people. And so for us to, you know, have a to do it in a game-clinching game at home, wins the NLCS MVP, pretty special, and I'm just happy to be able to go along for the ride.
Yeah, so the Dodgers are back in the World Series for the second straight season. This is the fifth time in the last 9 years they're back at the World Series. So overall, quite a night.
Now, besides Ohtani's great performance last night, the series really wasn't all that difficult for the Dodgers to win, right? I think you were telling me earlier.
Milwaukee's, yeah, really, the story of the series, to be honest with you, was the Dodgers pitching. Milwaukee scored 1 run in game 1, 1 in game 2, 1 in game 3, and then 1 in game 4. You're not going to win, obviously they know this, you're not going to win too many games with only scoring 1 run. So yeah, it was, and Milwaukee had the best record in the regular season. It was kind of surprising. I think the Dodgers were still favored. Everyone looks at their roster and says, that's still a better roster. Right. It proved out this time. So.
That's unusual, right? I mean, did they just choke or something?
You know, they had a very emotional previous series against the Cubs. They were going against their former, well, actually, their former manager had left to go to the Cubs. He was very popular. That's Craig Counsell, very popular in Milwaukee, very successful in Milwaukee. They won in 5 games. It was a very emotional series. I don't know. I kind of feel like that had something to do with it. It was maybe a letdown when they faced the Dodgers, if you can believe that. But in any case, yeah, it was not a very competitive series, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's not over yet, so who are the Dodgers going to play next?
Well, right now, Seattle won last night 6-2, so they take a 3-2 lead over Toronto in the ALCS. Now the series will shift back to Toronto for Game 6 and possibly Game 7 if Toronto wins. Now, Game 6 is Sunday. Now, Mariners got several big home runs yesterday, none bigger than Eugenio Suarez's grand slam, though, in the bottom of the 8th inning. That broke the 2-all tie. That was Suarez's second home run of the day. Cal Raleigh also homered. Now, meanwhile, for Toronto, Vlad Guerrero Jr. went 1 for 2 with a double. He also drew a pair of walks. I don't blame the Mariners for walking him, though. I mean, he's had a monster postseason, if not even better than Shohei Ohtani. But anyway, one of those two will play the Dodgers. No matter who it is, the World Series will start Friday night. If it's Toronto, if they advance, the World Series will start in Toronto. They'll get the home field advantage. If Seattle wins, though, this World Series will start in Los Angeles, and they will get the home field advantage. It's all based on, you know, how many wins you have in the regular season.
All right, who's your pick?
Who is my pick? I feel like Toronto is going to do it. I mean, I feel like Toronto is going to advance in this series, or in the ALCS over the Mariners. That's what I think. But they got to win 2 at home to do it.
So if Toronto wins, then they go up against the Dodgers?
Yeah.
And then who wins?
Oh, well, that's a really good one. I think the Dodgers still take it.
Really?
They really just I mean, they swept Cincinnati in the first round. Then they took 3 out of 4 against, now I can't remember who it was. Oh, it was Philadelphia in the division series. They swept Milwaukee here in the NLCS. They are on a roll. I just think they're going to do it.
All right, Dodgers all the way.
You hold me to it. Unless
Okay.
I'm wrong. All right.
And then I won't.
We'll just forget I said this.
All right. Okay, so let's forget it for now and switch to college football because I know we got a lot of games going on today. What's going to be happening?
Yeah, well, for one, we already had a bit of an upset today in the SEC. I mean, 17th ranked Vanderbilt beat number 10 LSU 31-24. Let's take a look at this one. Commodores had 239 yards rushing to LSU's 100. 20 first downs for them to 14 for LSU. No turnovers in this game, though. So Vanderbilt bounces back with a win after playing Alabama very close last week, but losing. They are now 2-1 in the SEC. LSU drops to 2-2 in league play. Let's look at some more scores here. 12th ranked Georgia Tech beat Duke 27-18. Yellow Jackets are 7-0. They are 4-0 in the conference. They lead the ACC. Oklahoma, meanwhile, beat South Carolina 26-7, so the Sooners bounce back after losing to Texas last week. And in the Big Ten, Michigan beat Washington 24-7 in Ann Arbor. Wolverines take advantage of 3 turnovers by the Huskies. Both teams are now 5-2. Going on right now, another big one in the SEC. 5th-ranked Ole Miss is at number 9, Georgia. Georgia leads 40-35 in the 4th quarter in this one after getting 2 touchdowns already in the 4th. Then tonight, we got 7 more big games. 11th ranked Tennessee is at number 6, Alabama. That's at 7:30 Eastern Time. Also at 7:30 Eastern Time, 20th ranked USC is at 13th ranked Notre Dame. And then at 8 o'clock, 15th ranked BYU hosts number 23 Utah as those two in-state schools continue the rivalry in the Big 12. So no baseball tonight, but plenty of college football to keep you college football fans busy.
All
yes,
right.
busy on the couch.
Well, we got to talk about the gossip in the college football world, and that's the big news this week. Penn State firing their head coach who's been with them for more than 11 seasons. What's your take on that?
I was very surprised. You know, he'd won 70% of his games there. And just last January, he had Penn State in the playoffs. They were in the semifinals. They went 13-3 last year. That was a sixth season where they won 10 or more games. He took him to a pair of Rose Bowls, a Fiesta Bowls. Now I get the frustration with his record versus top 10 ranked teams. They were just 4-21, including just 1-18 against those in conference play. But it just seemed to unravel so quickly. I mean, they lost to Oregon a few weeks ago in overtime, and then the disappointing losses to unranked UCLA and Northwestern back-to-back, where Penn State was huge favorites. And then all of a sudden he's fired. In any case, Franklin finally commented on that today. He said he was fired just before a team meeting on Sunday. He said he was in shock and that he wants to coach again, though. Now, Penn State still owes him a reported $49 million through 2031. I mean, that's the second biggest buyout in college football history. So he's doing all right financially despite that. But I guess Penn State really wanted him to go. I mean, that's a lot of money to pay someone to not coach for you. Well, the only bigger one was Texas A&M paid Jimbo Fisher $76 million when they fired him a couple of years ago.
Well, I wonder what's behind it all. Pretty interesting.
Well, you know, the fans were already chanting for him to get fired after they lost to Northwestern last Saturday. So he was under some fire with that, but I was still very surprised. Me personally.
All right. Well, as usual, Dave, thanks so much for that update.
Thank you, Arlene.
All right. Coming up, experts at the Louvre in Paris are teaming up with France's top dermatologists to employ a new technique for art restoration. And home kitchens in Washington State become bakeries where volunteers churn out loaves of bread for people in need. More on that when we come back. Experts at the Louvre in Paris are restoring France's priceless artifacts. The restoration work takes patience, but lasers used by top dermatologists are smoothing out some of the details. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
In Paris's Tuileries Garden, hundreds of works of art are waiting to be restored. Experts at the museums of France are chipping away at grime and dirt covering the pieces. Cleaning sculptures takes months, but laser technology is accelerating the process. They're the same advanced lasers used on human skin in cosmetic procedures, funded by the French cosmetics giant L'Oréal.
It's absolutely fascinating to see how these two lasers are used to improve the stones, or also in dermatology to improve the skin aspect. Both lasers are complementary.
Curator Laetitia Barraguet-Zuita says lasers are critical to restoration work.
For us it is extremely important because in the sculpture field, many pieces we have to restore were displayed outdoors and have black rust or thick grime on the surface.
But she says the lasers present a balancing act. How to perform a deep cleaning while conserving as much of the pieces as possible.
And sometimes the limestone is more fragile than the black crusts, and we have to find a way to clean them without damaging the original material.
Barraguet-Zuita says lasers have become a valuable tool. The technology is more versatile and far quicker than other methods.
Particularly with the infinito laser, it is more powerful. It is very helpful when we have thick black crust or grime, and it helps the workshop to be more efficient for the museums.
Like human skin, materials used in the works of art face similar stress.
Both the skin and the pieces of art will suffer from the time, from also the environment such as UV exposure, pollution, climate changes, humidity.
But some attempts to repair statues have caused more damage than before restoration work began.
So this is why it's very important to choose the right device for the right issue and with the right parameters also of the device to make sure that we will treat the issue but not harm the skin or the piece of work.
After 3 months, technicians have exposed some of the original colors on one piece. 10 more are slated for laser restoration. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Home kitchens in Washington state have become volunteer bakeries, churning out loaves of bread. They're part of a project called Community Loaves, which works to provide food for people in need.
Home baker Cheryl Ewaldson has baked nearly 800 loaves of bread in just 2 years, not because she loves carbs, but to help her neighbors. Her oven creations become donations.
I liked Community Loaves because it's the opportunity for me to bake something and to share something with others in the community where they don't necessarily need to know who I am, but they know that there's a community that loves and cares for them.
Former culinary school dean Catherine Curley is the founder of Community Loaves. She started the organization in Seattle when the pandemic hit in 2020.
I was home, displaced from my own work, and loved to bake. And just an idea sparked, would it be possible for us to help from our home get important, valuable nutrition to our food banks?
Since then, the initiative has grown into a network of nearly 900 volunteer bakers. They're spread out across Washington, Oregon, California, and Idaho. According to Curley, Community Loaves has already donated more than 220,000 loaves since its founding.
It makes us feel like we're becoming a bit of a supplier to that emergency food system, and it's all on volunteer power.
Community Loaves expects to keep baking, filling bread baskets for families in need. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And that's the news for this evening. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Arlene Richards. Good night.